and it seems every time he takes a penalty, the other team scores on the ensuing power play. So, Strom's got to find a way to stay out of the box because he's killing this team right now. And you know me, I'm the biggest Strom
I know, I'm
fan.
listening to that. That's your boy, and you buried him, and he deserves every freaking single sentence of it.
Hey, look, I'm not going to play favorites here. When he's good, I'm going to tell you he's good. When he's bad, I'm going to say he's bad. And, Quinn sat him for a little bit the other game, which I guess was good to see. But
not long enough.
Well, it's true because he came right back the next game and took another stupid. I shouldn't say a stupid penalty because the one against the Blues was a bit of a phantom call. But you know what? He takes so many penalties, he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt now. So, that stuff happens. And I think the biggest problem on the penalty kill, unfortunately, is this team can't win faceoffs anymore either. So, you're not winning. You're taking penalties. You can't win a faceoff on the PK, and that's going to lead to power play goals against. So, I wrote something down. What's the stat? How many they've given up a power play goal against in 7 of the last 8 games or something ridiculous like that. Yeah, 6 of the last 7 games they've given up a power play goal. That's a problem. And that's, leading to some of the problems on defense. You're playing man down, half the game now. So, they got to find a way to cut back on the penalties. They got to be much better in the faceoff circle if you're going to be on the PK. And, hopefully Quinn has them doing faceoff drills or something. Because
look at your guys, that's you're talking about Mika. You're talking about Strome. You're talking about,
Hedl.
Hedl, obviously. What's your take on Hedl, Lisa?
He's a young guy.
I knew you were going to say it. I guess I can't bring up Kako later either. He's young guys. But
you can't complain about the year Hedl's had. He's been very good, but there's going to be inconsistencies. What was the guy, 20 years old? He's not going to be Zibanejad, so he's going to go through times where he's not scoring. He's going to be invisible, and that's going to happen with a young player, just inconsistencies. If he's going to have these type of ruts, in 2 years, that's a problem. Now, I don't worry about it. So, he's up and down as any rookie would be. I don't have any complaints as far as, Hedl goes. But, our centers are young. There's not a lot of depth there. And, that's something hopefully they're going to address in the offseason at the draft, where they're maybe stockpiling some centers or maybe making some trades, depending on what they decide to do with guys like Strome or D'Angelo. If they look to potentially move them, who knows? But the center position is a weakness, within this organization, organizational depth wise. They got to start bringing in some centers.
Well, they didn't have a problem during the 9-game run, we're only mad at them when they're losing, Kevin.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny though? It's like we're getting back to the general fundamental, deficiencies of the team here. And, obviously when they were running high there for a couple of weeks, it's like, it's funny how you just kind of lose sight of that. And that's why I think, like I said, you look at these, especially the Flyer games, it brings you back down to reality. Yes, again, losing Kreider, big guys. But, all joking aside, the youth, the age, everything else, the inexperience, most of the, if you go up and down the Metro at least, and then in the Atlantic in this conference, yes, our centermen are very inexperienced and go up against some of the best centers in the league. As far as, you look at the other teams that they've got to play and they've got to get through, and that goes without saying. But I get a little frustrated, I guess, sometimes, just as far as being a fan of the game in terms of, fundamental hockey, coverage, face-offs, stuff that you're doing redundantly in practice every day. And, whoever's, they're kids, yes, but they've been playing – they've been doing this stuff for a long time. There's only a certain amount of positions you can kind of get into in terms of, getting into a face-off circle there, watching the linesman drop the puck or whatever, and then, fighting in and out of it. It's a dogfight in there, obviously, but, I'm just kind of, it's tough to, I guess this is the problem with where this team has us. Maybe for me as a fan, to the highs and lows of it right now, and coming back down to the low end of things, where we have to really just kind of keep things in perspective. And I think that's a frustrating part of it because, when these guys have shined and when they've just lit the lamp and they've played, great hockey and they were able to come back and everything else. And it definitely is. It's a roller coaster ride. It's a roller coaster of, strength and endurance, mental stuff, how you come into a game, your frame of mind, who you're playing and everything else. So these are probably standing out a little more than anything. Kako not getting any points, not really contributing, at all pretty much, is outside of being just a guy on the bench out there. And, yes, he's 19 now, by the way. He's not 18 anymore. But these are just some frustrating things for me. And I guess where I'm going to toss it to you now gets back to the coaching. How do you coach this team going forward with the frame of mind that you want to make the playoffs, the tease that you're 4 to 6 points out, and then you've got all this developmental stuff that you have to concentrate on that you can't lose sight of, and that you can't get really upset about. And I commend Quinn for this too, because I thought his post-game presser last night was excellent. He was really kind of, he was really grounded about the whole thing, and I think, as far as him being the coach for this team and going forward, I think that's kind of huge because he didn't flail off too much, especially, after the 2 big losses to the Flyers. But I think, I guess that's my question to you, KD, in terms of looking at what he's doing, in terms of where the team is right now in its position, in terms of them playing above their grade the last 9 games, and then obviously getting knocked down to earth, especially against the Flyers.
Yeah, I mean, he just has to keep it positive and continue to go with what's gotten him there, and continue to go with the young players they have. And like I said, I'd like to see Gauthier get more of a shot. Quinn all year has initially sort of deferred to veteran guys, whether that was earlier in the year when he went with Haley and Smith over some of the younger guys, where they went Stuckheedle and Kraftsoff down in Hartford, and that's probably why he decided to go with Di Giuseppe first. Give a more of a veteran guy a chance, and maybe he'll go with Gauthier, from now on. But look, he's not going to change anything up. I mean, it's gotten to this point now, and he'll continue to give players like Fox more time and Lindgren more time as they continue to be the best defensive pair on the team, and lean on Panarin and Zibanejad, who have been 2 of the best players in the league this year. I think that we're talking about different when you look at the team, the highs and the lows, and where we are and what we've been doing. I think the Rangers have had 3 guys in Zibanejad, Panarin, and Kreider who are having career years, and that's made up for or masked some of the issues that we're having, where Kakko isn't really scoring, and maybe Howden isn't developing. Maybe you expect a little bit more from Howden. I don't think he's been bad, but I've definitely expected a little bit more from him, and you're able to deal with Hedl going into some dry spells and things like that. But when you lose a Kreider, one of these guys having like a career year, or what seemingly would end up being a career year for him, it sort of exposes the lack of depth that this team has. Because you look at these last 3 games, and we could say, yeah, the Flyers were sort of a juggernaut going in, and the Blues are really good and whatnot. But I think if Kreider is in there, I think those games are different. I just do. I think he's been that impactful this year. So you don't have a player. Not most teams don't, but the Blues are missing Tarasenko. And they look like they didn't skip a beat. Last night and this season so far. So they're in a spot now where they don't have players to step in when you lose a Kreider. So that's just to go back to your previous sort of sentiment, it's something that the team has to look at. Is this team just a product of, these three guys and how good they've been this year? And then maybe a little bit of a soft schedule coming into the new year. Now, as the schedule ramps up and you lose one of those players, is this what this team really is? That I think that's a scary. I don't want to say scary, but that's the concern right now with maybe some Ranger fans. And look, I hope the team proves me wrong and we have a ridiculously awesome March. But I now look at it a little bit like, maybe last week I was like, this team's winning a cup. But now I'm looking at it, I'm like, we still have some work to do here, before, we get to that contender, and I've been saying all year, it's going to take 3 or 4 years. And I think after this week, it probably still is going to take, maybe not 4, but, 3 years before this team is really contending.
Well, maybe it's not so much that it'll be 3 or 4 years, but I think, there's 2 guys that are watching this team, and that's JD and Gorton too. And obviously the highs and the lows, there's probably a couple of guys in this lineup that probably aren't the guys that this, franchise is going to keep or going to need. You look at some of the names here and some of the guys who really aren't producing, and whether they're third or fourth line guys, and that's pretty much going to be their peak. But outside of the, like I said, Kreider, Panarin, and Mika, obviously Strom's had a great year, obviously, in terms of, his points and setting guys up and everything else, and take his defensive side and his penalty taken aside there too. But there's not a lot of guys here. Hedl hasn't gone on a kind of a stretch run where he's popping a lot of goals, and Fast hasn't done that, and McKegg and Lemieux, and I mean, these aren't the kind of those aren't the names of the kind of guys that even Buchnevich too. They're not scoring big goals. They're not personalities that it's there. The potential's there, and whether it's going to come around or not, but I don't think, maybe Buchnevich a little bit, but the other guys, I don't know if those are the guys that are going to put up 30 some odd goals, 35 goals a year, and whether or not is that what this team needs, or every team needs 25, 30 goal scorers to balance that out. And you bring up a great point. Like I said, Kreider going down, huge thing. The guys did somewhat okay when Mika went down there at the beginning of the season. Panarin was out a couple of games, so those 3 guys that we've talked about, they've been actually 3 of the injuries throughout the course of the year, all at different levels, and obviously Kreider now the worst here in terms of his length out, the time that he's going to be out. But if you look up and down the rest of this roster, I don't know, are those guys that are going to, lift you and carry you through a playoff series? I mean, obviously we don't know that yet. A lot of these guys haven't been in that type of situation. But these are big games. These are big games that they're playing these last 3 games against these teams, especially the Flyers and everything. I think just long term, as far as the rebuild 3 or 4 years, I also think that the Rangers are probably going to make roster changes too, to complement the big 3, obviously, that are signed here for a long time, and they've got to get a couple of stronger, two-way players and. Maybe some more experience and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if this team is going to be contending, a guy like Jesper Fast, who I love and I would like to see them re-sign, he needs to be in the bottom 6, not in the top 6. I think the same thing with Strome. As good of a year as he's having, if the Rangers are going to be a contending team, on a contending team, Ryan Strome is a third-line center. He's not, Panarin center. I think if in 3 years Strome is the third-line center and Foss is the fourth-line winger, I think we're in a good spot, because that means there's much better players in that top 6.
Absolutely,
and yeah. we're a much deeper team, because Strome as your number 3 center is much stronger, obviously, than him as your number 2. And I think overall that would show that this team is much deeper, where, say, you would sustain an injury to that second-line center, whoever that is, and you had to move Strome up, but you'd feel good about that. But if Ryan Strome goes down now as your second line center, maybe you're a little more worried about it. So, yeah, I agree. I mean,